let's try a different one. Kentucky State Police Academy.
Southern Police Institute, this is Angela. How can I help you?
Well, hi, Angela. My name is Andrew. I'm doing a research report on a phenomenon in America that has to do with police training. And one of the officers that have been involved in our auditing over the last 10 years has freely said on camera that he's a Kentucky officer, by the way, that he's trained that he can demand ID from citizens that are not part of a criminal investigation in efforts to, I guess, investigate whether someone has warrants or, you know, their driving history or, you know, things of that matter. You know, running through David or NCIC and various databases without prior consent and without a crime. Now, obviously, that's not true. You know, there are restrictions on when someone must present ID versus when, you know, they cordially present ID. And because this is such a big phenomenon that's affecting so many Americans' lives, it's important that we find out where where the water on the back aisle 3 isn't being reported, you know, so we can stop the slip and falls. You know, if you understand the reference there is that we really don't need officers saying, well, I was trained this way, and claiming qualified immunity on grossly erratic behavior and rogue behavior that's according to law and policy. And in they're obviously a lot of times they're fired from the department they work for, but they're not their certifications aren't removed. So the question I pose for your academy is, what training do you provide officers on when they can force an ID out of someone under a lawful order, versus when they're,
I don't know that any of the training we do here, they would be instructing them. That would be something they would be taught in a basic academy. We don't do that. We do higher education,
so
like management.
DOJTC, you mean, like DOJTC and Police Academy, the Kentucky Police Academy, where the state troopers are trained, like those two places.
Probably more like that, yeah.
Yeah,
or they would go through an academy. This isn't something, we don't teach like basic things. That should be something they would be taught like way early on.
You would think, right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I 100% know what you mean. You would think it's a very common, and especially in today's world with everyone's got a camera, right? So what we're running into today is that a world of citizens with cell phones that have cameras. And a feeling of uneasiness when officers are at like traffic stops or patrolling neighborhoods, an uneasiness with businesses that are in public view that are being filmed legally, you know, by constitutional rights, and officers are being called to the scene. But we still have community policing efforts from like 1983 from Reagan administration, where, you know, it's you go to every call. And then on top of that, we have after the 9/11 situation with the you see something, say something, and a citizenship of people who are probably pretty quick on the trigger to do that. You know, so they're calling 911 about non-crimes, but we don't have an education process anymore because police are going to every single call. So when you compound all those different elements, we find, and being in the auditing community, which is we're part of the civil rights community as well as the media relations community. So, you know, really, we fall into several sectors. We have unfortunately been finding more and more footage of police officers that seem to be systemically thinking they were bucking authority or attempting to get a rise out of them, or that were somehow an extremist group, you know, like and when we see that over and over again in the auditing community, we saw it not long ago done with the sovereign citizen people, and then I started hearing cops say, "Are you a constitutionalist?" Which I would hope every American citizen in this country is a constitutionalist, but it really started to worry me about these labels that seem to be coming from like an academy level. You know, they seem to be, they definitely could be within the culture and not in the training, you know. But But I think that's as in our sector of media, it's important that we find out where the liability resides to put an end to these obtuse interactions with officers that are responding to non-crimes and then doing criminal type investigatory work under the pretense of a crime being committed, and in that case, because the old policing, the police weren't there until a crime was committed. So then if they want ID, yeah, you got ID, you're a criminal. That was the old ways. But with this new way of policing, is like some of the old ways are still being practiced while the new age values are still, progressing within law enforcement. Do you understand what I mean? Am I being clear enough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not who you want to talk to. I can tell you that. I've worked here as staff, so I am not in law enforcement.
What do you do there?
Here, but I'm a coordinator of publications and marketing for here.
Right.
To send out advertisement, but I'm not the person you want to talk to. I can put you through to the director and see if he has anything.
Yeah. We definitely want to get to the bottom line, and if we can encourage proper training on this level, that would be important as well, right? I mean, I think that at this point in time,
I'm just saying,
yeah,
you don't have to keep talking. I mean, I'm not who you want to talk to.
No,
so
transfer me.
You want me to put you through to someone else?
I do, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. All right. You're welcome.
Yeah. She just sends out all the propaganda, but she doesn't want to hear the propaganda from our side. It's a one-way street, kind of. It's how propaganda works. One comments.
SGI, this is Mike Vassy. How can I help you?
Hi, Mike. Are you the director there?
I am.
Oh, awesome. My name is Pastor Andrew. I'm calling you because, for 10 years now, we've been working on, I guess you'd call it investigative journalism. It's been a series of stories for quite some time where police officers have unfortunately been the feature highlight of our stories. And we got to the point now that we're contacting police academies, because we've often been told by ex-police officers, ex-law enforcement, as well as current law enforcement, that they're being trained that when they're doing an investigation stemmed off of a 911 call for a non-crime, that they have a right to demand identification like as a lawful duty, and then when they're being denied that, and I'm not speaking on a specific instance, but I can for you in your area, when they're being denied this, the ID by constitutional rights advocates, or a lot of times we're auditors, we're filming these things, and these interactions are being published online, and they're getting millions and millions of views, and the overall social degradation from that entire aspect has to be addressed, is I guess what we're getting at. And what we're trying to figure out now, and I know you're of a higher learning facility, which is very important, is we don't know where these officers are claiming to get their training, other than one that claimed he's getting it from the DOJT in Kentucky. So I'm putting out FOIA requests and that, but a lot of things are redacted. I guess the bottom line is there a course within your facility that trains police officers on when a stop is a cordial, consensual stop versus when it's an investigatory stop versus when it's a an arrest, in the levels of RAS that in those various things that have to occur before they move into lawful obligations to get identifications in the state?
No, we deal with mostly high-level management.
Yeah.
Issues.
I wish I could say it was only beat cops that were doing this. I wish I could tell you that it wasn't high-level management that was also involved in what I will call the word what it is. It's ignorance. That somebody's not being trained, and they're being trained in a real-life sense on YouTube, and that's causing contentious relations.
I don't agree. Most cops get the basic constitutional issues in a basic academy.
Okay.
As far as the requesting or demanding of identification, that varies state to state. As far as what the state law says,
certainly.
What the regional appeals court,
agreed,
or U.S. Circuit Court has determined as far as case law and precedent. So it's kind of different in every jurisdiction. As far as Kentucky goes, That would be, as far as your new officer, the officer is getting certified for the first time, they're going to learn all that in the basic academy, and the Kentucky Revised Statute has all the listing of the different requirements for a basic officer, as far as the hours and stuff like that.
But it doesn't say what kind of training, so it won't itemize the type of training they're getting, or like what. I guess since we're asking such a specific.
Every state has a board. And in Kentucky, it's the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council.
I called them.
They determine the standards. Yeah, they determine the standards of training for Kentucky. So that would be your best source as far as finding out how Kentucky basic officers are trained and what specifically you're talking about.
Yeah, I placed that call, and I appreciate that. I guess, and I appreciate what you're saying, that your academy doesn't go over that topic, that it should be taught at a basic level. And I guess what we're getting at is the qualified immunity is basically saying they're ignorant. I mean, in all reality, qualified immunity is saying another officer would do the same thing in the same situation. We're all trained this way, so the story has to progress.
That's not what qualified immunity means.
Well, I mean, it could be interpreted a lot of different ways. I mean, I'm giving you a very probably a liberal sense.
Qualified immunity literally means that they're acting on the facts and circumstances available to them at the time. They can't be held to the standard of hindsight. That's what qualified immunity is.
So in that case, if they're being trained that this is obtuse to legislation to demand ID when there's no crime committed, then they're acting outside of policy in a rogue way, and so we have to address.
Well, once again, you're speaking generalities. It's different by every jurisdiction.
Right.
And if they're investigating the possibility of a crime, then they can identify that person. But it all depends on jurisdiction on whether or not they can demand an identification as far as an ID.
Certainly, if they were doing it within the law, this definitely wouldn't be a conversation. I'm definitely talking about rogue outside of legislation. The examples. I mean, I'm sure.
The reality is you got 18,000 police departments. You have 800 to 850,000 cops in the United States, and you have at least 51 different standards of training boards all over the United States.
Yeah.
Showing exactly what they're supposed to be trained as. You have officers that are in 1- or 2-man departments, all the way up to the tens of thousands. So you have a huge disparity in how people are trained, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
But most states do have, in fact, I think all states at this point do have a training board that sets the standards for training. I know that the constitutional issues that you're talking about are, I don't think that there's a state or a territory in the United States that doesn't cover the constitutional issues like ad nauseum.
Right.
As far as how that training then gets applied to their day-to-day operations, like I said, having 850,000 cops, all kinds of different personalities,
but all trained,
standards as far as their agencies go and stuff.
Yeah,
you do get a lot of disparity there. There's no doubt about that.
But it sounds like you said that the standardized.
Training,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What's that?
It sounded like you said that you can't think of a state now that doesn't cover it ad nauseum. So when you say something like that, it makes me think that we do have some kind of standardized training on this specific issue, and that officers that are being certified within the United States of America, for the most part, are being trained on these topics. And I guess that's what brings the story to almost a closure, but we have to find liability, because we can't just keep on. We've been doing this for 12 years, 10 years myself, 12 years since Photography is Not a Crime was started by Carlos Miller in Miami. So, over a decade ago, we've been started doing this. We can't keep posting story after story of individually training officers on the beat. We have to find a level of standardization where the academies are being held as somewhat accountable for these officers knowing constitutional rights before they're certified, or if they're violating them in rogue mannerisms, that their certifications become at risk. I mean, that has to give.
You do know that all that exists, correct?
I know we have had some progress.
Accountability.
You do? Okay.
Every single bit of that accountability you're talking about, it does exist in Kentucky, and the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council actually, every single time they meet, which is quarterly, they have officers that are up for decertification through the state because of some issues that they've had on the job, disciplinary-wise, or getting in trouble or whatever else. That accountability measure is there.
Okay.
With all states, it's just that it is by state. So there's no national standards for training.
Got it. Oh, okay,
the accountability, though, is pretty big, and Kentucky's one of the most robust as far as that accountability goes at the state level.
I mean, and that's good to hear. I will tell you, we don't see as many audits, failed audits. I mean, obviously we see audits, but I look at fail when I'm talking about the negative part of it, are the ones where there's failures. We don't see many of them come out of Kentucky.
I mean, it's a lot of this stuff, and I think it is what it is, but a lot of this information is hard to assimilate because it is different state by state, and also different for the circuit court, the U.S. Circuit Court. It's different for jurisdiction. There's a lot of different things at play. So speaking generalities as far as how an officer is trained, it's super difficult in the United States. We're a very, very disparate system. We're different than anywhere else in the world. It's very, very hard. Like I said, 18,000 agencies, 850,000 cops, and at least 51 different standards of training all over the United States.
But all of them dealing with the constitutional rights ad nauseum, though. Like, all of them are dealing with constitutional rights, it seems like.
As far as the constitutional issues, I mean, I've dealt with a lot of different states and their post boards, and post stands for Police Officer Standards of Training, so it's called something different in every state. But they're mostly called POST, P-O-S-T. Mm-hmm. And I've dealt with a lot of them, and the constitutional side of, like, that what do you call it? Your core transaction with a person, whether or not you have reasonable suspicion or probable cause, how you're investigating a crime, or whether or not you're just doing a Terry stop on somebody. Those are all issues that are super basic, all trained in every basic academy in the United States, I guarantee it.
I thought so too.
As far as how they're applied on the street, that has a lot to do with how the agency trains that person on the job, what that supervision looks like, the knowledge level of that agency, because like I said, you could have two-man departments.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you can have large departments also that have big training resources and everything else. So it definitely varies by agency, and it 100% varies by state and jurisdiction. But as far as the U.S. constitutional stuff, that's all the same.
You're covering it. Okay, yeah. At least Kentucky is.
It's pretty much the same.
And that's good. That's good to hear. I mean, it really is good to hear. I don't want to keep you any longer than I have to, and you've been very clear on at least from your understanding, and it sounds like we're all on the same page. We just want. We want this done well, and I don't think anybody's disconnected from the law enforcement community when it comes to risk and liabilities of situations when you're not identifying people, and I think that a lot of times with these videos and this effort that's going out, I really wish we had more of a traditional formal oversight committee that was dealing with these issues. But with citizen journalism dealing with them, it's going to be a lot. Again, we're not very organized ourselves, and there will be people who
it's like I said, if you want my opinion, I'll give it to you. And that is that we need a federal oversight regulatory authority like they have for, let's say, the FAA for airlines.
Agreed.
We don't have anything like that in the United States, and so it literally is left up to the state and local jurisdictions to define how they're going to hold people accountable and how people are trained, et cetera, et cetera. And because of our system of government and the Constitution, we have a very, like I said, disparate system of law enforcement. We don't have a centralized law enforcement.
States' rights,
we don't have centralized standards of training.
Yeah, states' rights. I get it.
States.
And that might be a good thing because there's a place for everybody in the United States. I don't know. I guess that's up for a different debate or a different topic at a different time. I appreciate your time and helping us, help understand this and the positioning of the academy. So thank you so much, and you have a beautiful day today.
Yeah, you too, man.
God bless you.
Bye.
I mean, that was a charming conversation. I mean, I think that it's good that we're talking to a director of a higher education platform, because with those platforms, they're privatized to some degree. You have government contracts, but they're privatized. And if the training doesn't exist or isn't being implemented properly at the basic level, getting the ears of anyone within the academia of law enforcement is definitely what we want to do. And so I'm very grateful for that conversation. Pastor Andrew, love you, and see you next time. American Culture TV.